And now, stand-up community subscribers and listeners from around the globe, it's time to Stand Up with Pete Dominic, where we ask the important questions that impact you, your family, and your community. Such as, if social media companies sell out to high-bidding billionaires, will all the memes then just be about mansions and yachts? And will buying these spandex cycling shorts at the estate sale mean I'm being turned into a spandex warrior by someone from beyond the grave? And now, the podcast host who never needs spandex to accentuate his sexy bod, Pete Dominic!
Thank you, Pete Cole, for another amazing introduction. And while I don't need spandex, I'm not opposed to wearing spandex. As a matter of fact, I'm often in a spandex top while working outdoors. I will say that, and I love it. It's functional, it's efficient, and it's comfortable. And I have no problem what anybody thinks about my junk. Folks, I have a great show for you today. The great crime writer, one of the best living crime writers today, best-selling author Don Winslow, an activist now as well. He's announced he's retiring from writing, by the way, after his new series is published, and he is going to go full-time into activism, political activism. He is a real anti-Trump guy, and I didn't even want to necessarily call him a progressive because most of what he wants is to save democracy and find consequences for Trump and all of those who served with him and were so corrupt. And Don Winslow talks about that today with me. Really interesting conversation. Then I have Eric Siegel, the constitutional law professor, of course, one of our favorite stand-up contributors, joining me to talk about the arguments that were heard at the Supreme Court yesterday about school prayer in school. So very significant issue yesterday that we heard, and another sobering conversation with Professor Siegel coming up as well. And I've got news for you, so we've got to get to that, but just want to say, as always, thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you haven't, join now. Join us, standupwithpete.com, an amazing group of over 800 people, and just coming up now on 600 shows, almost 2.5 years here, posting almost every day, and I can't do it without you. So thank you very much. Thank you to my sponsor this week, Truebill, truebill.com/standupwithpete. And a request, if you don't mind, for more vitamin N pictures. Get out, take photos of nature, and if there's no man-made objects in them, I can share them with subscribers on the daily email that I send. So send me your hashtag vitamin N to standupwithpete@gmail.com and let me know where you were when you took that photo. Hopefully it's recent, and send it along. I can never have enough of those. And it's my incentive to get myself and you outside. Just get out and connect with nature, from a bird to a bug to a blade of grass. Get outside. While I think it's the best medicine for almost anything that ails you. So send me those pics and I'll share them with everybody else. It's great to get your pictures from all over the country and the world as well. Okay, well, I've got the most comprehensive collection of news stories for you and all of your friends each and every day. A veritable potpourri of audio clips as well as headlines for you. Not going to get any more news, including undercovered stories that are in the public's interest anywhere, including those big corporate media daily news podcasts, than you will right here from me in my shed on Stand Up. So let's do it. All right. Well, a New York judge held Trump in contempt of court and is fining him $10,000 a day for failing to turn over documents to the state's attorney general. Former chief of staff for Donald Trump, Mark Meadows, texted with apparently Trump's family, Trump associates, January 6 rally organizers, Fox News hosts, and over 40 Republican members of Congress before and after the violence at the Capitol. Meadows was warned that January 6 could turn violent, but went ahead with the, quote, Stop the Steal rally anyway. The big news yesterday, of course, though, was that Twitter had accepted Elon Musk's $44 billion offer to buy the social media company and take it private. Also, I mentioned this last night, but Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and the U.S. is apparently hoping the war in Ukraine will result in a, quote, weakened Russia. It's day 461 of the Biden administration. There are 198 days until the midterm elections and 22 days until the Board of Education election that I'm working each and every day on here in Clarkstown, New York. And things are getting ugly, folks, in the local campaign. I will tell you about it on Thursday night at the Hangout, but wild stuff happening here in our local Board of Education campaign, specifically to me. And I look forward to talking to listeners, subscribers about it on Thursday night at the Hangout, where sometimes there are secrets that are shared, always truths that are liberated. But let's get back to what's happening in the world and that big news yesterday that Elon Musk has bought Twitter. And what does it mean? Here's MSNBC's Hallie Jackson breaking the news yesterday afternoon.
Also breaking this afternoon, you heard about this, the multi-billion-dollar shakeup to social media. In just the last 5 minutes, Twitter announcing it's accepting the buyout offer from this guy, Elon Musk.
All right, well, the hot takes came fast from across the social media platforms. And here are a few. Who knows what is going to happen, what Elon Musk's aims are. Everybody is trying to prognosticate and predict what they think his aims are and what he'll do. But here's Brian Tyler Cohen, a popular progressive commentator, who says Elon Musk told the United Nations he would give them $6 billion to end world hunger. They showed him a detailed plan of how they would use the money. They called his bluff and gave him their plan, and then they never got the money. Now he's buying Twitter for $45 billion. Dave Rothkopf at Foreign Policy Magazine writes, the richest guy in the 2021 Forbes 400 owns the Washington Post. Number 2 now owns Twitter. Number 3 owns Facebook. Number 5 and 6 started Google. Numbers 4 and 9 started Microsoft. Number 10 owns Bloomberg. Free speech? You decide. Anand Giridharadas says, what Elon Musk is doing is what plutocrats have been always doing, using money to buy power and power to protect their money, taking control of media to rig the discourse and hedge against resentment, and branding themselves the solution to the very problem they are. And here is writer and commentator Anand Giridharadas on the readout with Joy Reid on MSNBC last night with more reaction on Elon Musk buying Twitter.
And I also think this free speech issue needs to be unpacked, because like a lot of issues promoted by people like this, the actual thing they're saying is not the actual issue. So the actual issue, I think, there is a feeling that people like Elon Musk propagate, and it's certainly widespread on the fascist right today, that this is a time of censorship and control and suppression of ideas on the right by these social platforms and other institutions. Well, what's actually been going on is that there have been pretty inadequate, modest, slight efforts by some of these platforms to solve an actual free speech issue, which is that so many human beings feeling so unsafe and being so unsafe when they use these platforms, being bullied, being harassed, being brigaded, being doxxed for the crime of being female or of color or both, that you were actually drastically limiting the amount of speech out there because people just don't want to play in that kind of sandbox. And these platforms have understood that and have made faint, modest efforts to address that by saying, let's not have as much Nazism on the platform. Let's not have as much misogyny and bullying. Let's still have a lot of it, but less. Anyone who's ever actually reported a tweet knows that it almost never still is shut down. But they've tried. And this is what's called censorship. Elon Musk lives in a world in which the only kind of free speech is white men feeling free to say whatever the hell they want. And what he doesn't understand, what a lot of those folks don't understand, is speech is actually freer when everybody not only has the opportunity to have an account and able to afford a phone to be able to tweet, but can feel safe, can know that they're not going to get harassed, can know that they're not going to get outed, can know they're not going to get piled on by the kind of astroturfed stands of some very rich man. And this future in which there would actually be more abundant and equitable speech terrifies the crap out of people like Elon Musk.
All right, there's one take. Now let's head over to the always brilliant Kara Swisher, who writes about technology and is a great, smart woman, really smart woman. She also was on MSNBC with Nicole Wallace, and I want to give you this whole 3-minute perspective because I think hers is a very valuable, balanced, credible opinion and take.
Who he is, but now I wonder what he's going to do. I think everyone, certainly in politics, wants to know, does Trump come back? Tell me what this means for that town square, as Musk describes it.
Well, it's a private company and he could do whatever he wants. A lot of what Twitter had issues with was, as a public company, it had to respond to all kinds of things, including shareholders, people coming for it. It has a business that's not very strong, and it also has an issue around its stock, which was quite flat since it went public. And so it's always struggled to make money, especially in the shadow of Facebook. Now it's got a private owner who does whatever he wants, and therefore it will be whatever he wants in that regard. And his other shareholders, of which there are a few, I'm sure, and banks and others that will also be part of the funding of this thing.
Kara, if you sift through his public statements about free speech, do you expect Donald Trump and COVID disinformation and election lies to be back on Twitter by this time tomorrow?
No. Let's sort them out. Donald Trump, I think he will let him back on Twitter. He's talked about timeouts for people who make trouble, not permanent bans. I think right after January 6th, when Trump was thrown off for inciting violence on Twitter and also Facebook, he objected to that. And he said that we should still listen to him, even if he did this. I guess he didn't assume it was inciting violence. People who ran Twitter did at the time, including Jack Dorsey. And so it'll just depend on what he wants to do. So he probably will. It's in his nature to want people to be able to argue with each other. And so he probably will. The other stuff, I don't know. This is going to be a really tough thing for Elon to deal with because a lot of this is different. A lot of things are different from other things. And so moderation on this platform is very, very difficult. And you can't have a public town square that's chaos at the same time. And so that'll be bad for business.
You know, Kara, some of the conversations we've had over, how Facebook allowed itself to be hijacked by Russian disinformation have centered around, what you've helped us understand are sort of structural impediments to keeping the junk out, and it's a lack of regulation. Do you think the fact that the right is so enamored by Elon Musk means that if they control Congress, there may never be any regulation of social media?
I don't know about that. I think they have issues around it. There's a lot of bipartisan agreement. It's not necessarily around free speech. It gets sucked up in the axle of free speech right now. And I think a lot of it's about data and data privacy and what you should know about what you're doing and your consent and consolidation and power. Remember, Donald Trump also sort of attacked the tech industry at the same time a lot of Democrats are. And so you see a lot of bipartisanship about this issue. It just depends on what. When you move away from the First Amendment free speech debates, of which there's nothing going to happen because the government can't regulate free speech, you do get to these data issues, which are much more important in my mind. And it does begin to make you understand it's about power and not necessarily anything else. And that's where I tend to focus.
All right. Kara Swisher on MSNBC. I thought that was really worth it, sharing all 3 minutes of it. There's more if you want to watch it on Deadline White House on MSNBC's website. But now let's go to the White House briefing where Jen Psaki was asked about this as well. What does Joe Biden think about Elon Musk buying Twitter?
A quick one on the breaking news, Twitter agreeing to let Elon Musk go through this purchase. Do you have a response to that? And does the White House have any concern that this new agreement might have President Trump back on the platform?
Well, I'm not going to comment on a specific transaction. What I can tell you as a general matter, no matter who owns or runs Twitter, the president has long been concerned about the power of large social media platforms, the power they have over our everyday lives, has long argued that tech platforms must be held accountable for the harms they cause. He's been a strong supporter of fundamental reforms to achieve that goal, including reforms to Section 230, enacting antitrust reforms, requiring more transparency, and more. And he's encouraged that there's bipartisan interest in Congress. In terms of what hypothetical policies might happen, I'm just not going to speak to that at this point in time.
Okay, and obviously one of the biggest and most obvious questions is, will Donald Trump be allowed to be back on Twitter? And if so, what will that mean for the world? And I think that's a valid and super important question. I personally, in my opinion, is the fact that he is not able to be on Twitter and Facebook constantly posting and lying is a good thing. I actually believe that. I'm open to arguing this issue and conversation. I look forward to talking with you about it on Thursday night to hang out and hearing from listeners anytime on it. And we'll be talking about it with guests here on the show, of course. But here is one more. This is actually, trigger warning, this is Donald Trump from his rally over the weekend. Where was he? In North Carolina? Where he has launched a competitor to Twitter, right? It's called Truth Social. But he doesn't even post on it because obviously he's waiting to see if it's a success. And then if it's not, he's going to separate himself from it. But he doesn't even know the name of his own social media platform. Here he is, warning, here he is at the rally over the weekend.
Had to give the American people their voice back by building something called Truth Central.
What?
Truth Central.
All right, so there you go. There is former disgraced president not even having any idea what the name of the app that Devin Nunes, the former congressman, is apparently running. It's just been, I think, a boondoggle for him, as is everything he touches, because it all dies. All right, well, let's go now to we'll move on. I'll be talking about that a lot with people. I think it's a super important thing. You're seeing all kinds of takes on that news that Elon Musk has bought Twitter, but I thought one interesting one was from Aaron Rupar on Twitter, who wrote, "The worst people in the world think this is great news, which tells you everything you need to know." Yeah, and it's a clip of Tucker Carlson talking about Elon Musk buying Twitter. All right, but moving on, let's listen to the French President Emmanuel Macron at his victory speech last night I think it was in Paris. I don't know. Somewhere in France, because it'd be weird if he gave his acceptance speech for winning the French election in Austria.
And finally, my thoughts go to those who voted for Mrs. Le Pen. I understand her disappointment this evening. No booing. From the very beginning, I've said that I don't want to see that. Because from now on, I am no longer a candidate for a party, but I am everyone's president.
All right, here's President Joe Biden on Macron's win.
Well, I feel good about the French election, number one. Number two, I tried to talk to him last night. We've spoken to the staff, but he was at the Eiffel Tower having a good time. So I'm going to be talking to him today.
Wow, Macron didn't take Biden's call last night. He was having too much of a good time, but I'm sure they did talk yesterday. All right, now let's move on to some more. I've got both Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, two of the most popular progressive Democrats, and who identify, I believe, both as Democratic socialists in the U.S. Congress. They joined the Amazon Labor Union for a rally on Staten Island Sunday to show their support for the tech giant's first union. Here is Senator Sanders.
So I say to Jeff Bezos, who owns a $500 million yacht, I say, Jeff, when you're out on your yacht, I want you to think about the workers in Staten Island and your employees all over this country. They don't want a $500 million yacht. They don't want a $23 million mansion that you have in Washington, D.C. What do they want? They want housing that is affordable. They want to be able to put a few bucks to send their kids to college. They don't want to be exploited and continue this massive turnover that takes place here because of the horrible working conditions. So what you are doing here is sending a message to every worker in America that the time is now to stand up to our oligarchy, to stand up to this excessive corporate greed, and create an economy that works for all, not just the few.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders. Now let's head over to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is also there in Staten Island at the Amazon Labor Union rally.
And if you're going to do business out here in New York, you got to treat our people right. And so if you can go to space, you can give our workers a bathroom break. Ain't that right? If you can go to space, you can make sure that you're treating people well and giving them solid health care benefits, that they don't have a 3-hour commute to and from work, that they can afford the house that they can live in, that people don't have to be sleeping in their cars in order to work for Amazon. All of this is an indignity and an injustice, and it has no place in New York City. And we're going to change that, and right here, our workers out here are going to change that.
I mean, you could work that if you can go to space premise for a couple hours. I mean, you could just keep ripping on that. That's a good one. I like it when they fight. Okay, well, that is all of the audio I've got for you on today's news segment, but I do have more headlines and what I call the news dump and a great jingle that is written by Dan McDonald, performed by the great Pete Coe. And this jingle is about a news story out of Minnesota where a 3-legged hero dog who had cancer saved a baby otter from a river.
Gus the tripod cancer dog, in the river he jumps. Will he save the baby otter for today's news dump?
Yes! Yes, they nailed it. Damn it, Donald Pete Coe. Well done. You pulled it off. I sent that story to them last night. They turned it around today. Great work, boys. Anybody wants to collaborate, just reach out on Twitter, especially to those guys or myself. All right. What else? What other news stories that don't have a hilarious accompanying jingle and aren't necessarily as positive have I for you today? How about this one? Pot taxes have surpassed those from alcohol in all states that have legalized marijuana for recreational consumption. More in tax revenue from pot sales than alcohol sales? Wow, that is a very interesting new analysis. They found the 11 states where marijuana is legal pulled in just shy of $3 billion in excise taxes on pot in 2021 compared with just about $2.5 billion they made on alcohol excise taxes. Let's do this. Let's legalize it everywhere now. The NAACP is calling for Elon Musk to keep Trump off Twitter. Devin Nunes says he doesn't expect Trump to return to Twitter after the Musk purchase. The Supreme Court on Monday not only heard the argument that I talk about with Eric Siegel, but they agreed to hear an appeal from a Texas death row inmate named Rodney Reed, who claims untested crime scene evidence will help clear him. Reed was sentenced to death for the 1996 killing of a 19-year-old woman. Prosecutors say that Reed raped and strangled Stacy Stites as she made her way to work at the supermarket in a rural community south of Austin, Texas. So it'll be really interesting to see if he's exonerated there. How about this? The oldest person, thought to be, oldest person in the world has passed away, a Japanese woman named Kane Tanaka. She died at age 119. Still no word on the cause of death, but we're guessing it's that she was 119. She lived in a rest home and died at a hospital in Japan. A tweet from her family this month quoted her saying, "I was able to come this far with the support of many people. I hope you will continue to have fun and be cheerful and energetic." When she was honored as the world's oldest person in 2019, she said she was happier than she'd ever been. She said she lived by the motto, "Don't give up and say there's no point. Live with all your heart." I love it. That's a very inspiring story. Now I feel bad about my joke. Moving on, those 3 rich, super wealthy businessmen returned from the International Space Station with their astronaut escort Monday, wrapping up a pricey trip that marked NASA's debut as B&B host, writes the Associated Press. They flew back on the SpaceX capsule and they splashed down the Atlantic off the Florida coast to close out a 17-day tour that cost them each $55 million apiece. The trip was supposed to last a little over a week, but dicey weather kept them in orbit almost twice as long as they intended. And a real estate tycoon, Larry Connor, said that was fine with him, but then he got really motion sick and declared that he needed to talk to the manager. And then when they landed, the same guy, apparently his first words when he got out of the pod were, "How is my money?" Okay. The last 25 seconds or so I made up about Larry Connor. I don't know anything about the man, but he is said to be a real estate tycoon in this story from the Associated Press. And I don't know. That doesn't seem like a compliment to me. A Kansas district court judge on Monday struck down a new Republican-backed congressional map that would likely make it harder for the only Democrat in the state's delegation to win re-election this year. I've got David Daly on the books to talk about this story and more. I think we're taping on Wednesday, so he should be on Thursday's show. We'll get more into that story and others about gerrymandering and redistricting maps in this country and what they mean for the elections in November, which is still yet to be decided. GM General Motors is set to offer an electrified Corvette next year, so my dad is going to be very excited about that one. Joe Manchin's approval rating, Senator Joe Manchin, the controversial divisive senator from West Virginia, somehow his approval rating went up 17%. I got to figure out how that happened and try to understand it. And also, sales at Coca-Cola surged 16% during the first quarter as crowds returned to movie theaters, music venues, and sports stadiums. But, I mean, it's an insane amount of profit, or rather sales increase in one quarter, apparently offsetting the rising costs of their Russia exit. They probably lost a lot of money pulling out of Russia, but they made a lot of money getting back into our bodies in movie theaters and venues and so on. So that's interesting. Consumers continue to gravitate towards healthier beverages with sales of nutrition, juice, dairy, and plant-based beverages up 12%. So at least that's good. Sales of hydration, sports, coffee, and tea grew 10%. And sales of bullshit drinks that don't do what they say they're going to do increased like 85%, is my guess. All right, well, that's all I've got for you on today's news dump. So hopefully I didn't miss anything, but feel free to send me news stories. standupwithpete@gmail.com, because, of course, I always miss something. It's the news. It's never ending. But what's most important is what I try to throw in the news dump. Also, it's important to tell you about Truebill, because if you're like me, you might have gone into subscription overload during COVID, and that happens. But you can take back control of all your subscriptions with this awesome app, Truebill.com/standup, to find out more. If you find yourself constantly signing up for subscriptions that are impossible to cancel, never pay for an unwanted subscription again with Truebill. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they've forgotten about, and you're probably one of them like me. And free trials renew without your consent. That can cost hundreds of dollars. Do you even know how many subscription services you're paying for? Do you? I mean, I don't think I do. I should probably add that up. Well, guess what? Truebill can help you do that. Subscriptions add up. Sometimes we don't notice the monthly deductions from our bank accounts. And Truebill is a new app that's going to help you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, don't want, and simply forgot about. On average, people are saving thousands a year with Truebill. Becca says that, hands down, the best financial app I discovered. In my first week, I opened up $187 in unused recurring subscriptions. I'm obsessed. I never want to manage finances without Truebill again. Start canceling your unused subscriptions at Truebill.com/standup. Go right now. Truebill.com/standup. It could save you thousands a year. It's Truebill.com/standup. Okay. Now, time to get to my guest. First, I've got the best-selling author. He is considered one of the best crime writers of our time. I interviewed him back at the SiriusXM days, and his publicist remembered how much he enjoyed it. So now his new book is out. She reached out to me, and I was very happy to get Don Winslow back on the show to talk about City on Fire, as well as his political activism. He's the #1 international best-selling author of the Cartel trilogy. He's written 21 acclaimed award-winning international bestsellers. They've been made into TV shows and movies. He's a former investigator, anti-terrorist trainer, and trial consultant. And he is a very vocal anti-Trump political activist who has a massive following on Twitter. He's made so many videos, and that is what he's dedicating all of his time to now, because he just announced his retirement after this next trilogy of books. We talked about it all. You should follow him on Twitter at Don Winslow. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. There he is, Don Winslow. The new book is out, and it's the first of three, and they're all published, and I'm very excited. They're all written, and I'm very excited to talk to you about City on Fire. But, Don, apparently I have to address the fact that you've also announced that you're retiring. Welcome to the show. Great to see you. What's going on?
Great to see you, Pete. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm pulling the pin, you know. There are other things that I want to put my time and energy into. You know, you might know that we've been pretty active on Twitter and sort of speaking out against what I think is wrong. And I want to have the time and energy to do that. I want to have more time to spend with aspiring writers and to try to lift them, pay a little bit back. So, yeah, it's there'll be two more books after this, one each year, 23 and 24, and that'll be it.
Well, I want to get to the books, but I just want to pick up on I haven't talked to you in a long time, but I've certainly been following, supporting, and sharing your videos, your tweets, because you really have evolved into not only a best-selling author whose work gets turned into TV shows and movies and has won all kinds of awards, but you've really turned into an activist. You've taken your following, your brand, and you have not only been fearless. I mean, you've said anything you wanted without any concern about how it might hurt, say, book sales. Why? And has it?
You have to. We're in an existential moment in American democracy. And I've thought that since 2016. And so compared to that, book sales are frankly less important, you know? And I think that my buddy, my friend Shane Salerno and I do this thing. We want to speak in plain language, because the other side does. You know, they feel free to say anything, the most outrageous lies and accusations. And so I think it's important that there are some people out there who are also willing to speak in language as blunt and sometimes harsh.
Yeah, you know, I watched your interview with CBS Sunday Morning's Jeff Mason, and you did an interview with him a few years ago when, I don't know what was out, The Border maybe. But,
yeah, maybe.
You know, that's a great show. They give you a lot of time in a network morning show. Clearly, Jeff Mason respects your work, but he really, I thought, gave you a bit of a hard time in one portion of the interview where he said, don't you think, basically, I'm paraphrasing, your rhetoric, maybe it's not helping, it's too much, it's too hyperbolic, it's too angry or whatever. And what did you say to that, and what do you think about that?
You know, actually, it's Jeff Glor. And
my bad.
I have known him for a while. And he always challenges you. You know, he always throws that kind of question out. I don't recall exactly what I said to him, but I'll tell you what I think. You know, I think he was saying, aren't you part of this polarization? And what I would say is that right and wrong are polar opposites. Democracy and dictatorship are polar opposites. They're doing a fire drill here in the hotel, by the way. So if you hear the noise, there's nothing I can do about it. They're starting on the 4th floor, and I'm hoping that we finish up before they get to 14. And so I think, look, the other side, again, feels free to say anything they want. And then when we respond in kind, they start crying. Oh, the media's being mean to me. Don Winslow's being mean to me. He talks in harsh language. We have to stop, metaphorically speaking, bringing spoons to knife fights. Is what it is, man. I'm just going to say what I'm going to say.
Do you think it's been effective? You've made these really slick, well-produced, very powerful videos. I love them. I eat them all up. Yum, yummy. Sip it up. I love it. Is it working to, I don't know, what is the goal, I guess? How do you measure if it's effective?
Yeah, listen, there's no particular metric, you know, that's decisive, but I'll give you some indications. We did a video for Pennsylvania during the last presidential election that had 10 million views, more views than the candidates' videos. And you know how tight the Pennsylvania election was. Yeah. Candidates in various places where we've done this have told us how effective and what a difference these videos have made. So that kind of feedback leads me to believe that, yes, we're being effective.
I promise you I'm getting to your new book out today because I'm posting this on the 26th. City on Fire. Everybody's got to get it. But I got to ask you one or two more questions on your activism and your work and I've loved reading this book. It's so good. But also, I'll ask you about it in a moment. So what is it, do you think, Don, that's the kind of most important issue or issues? Because what I'm kind of seeing with a lot of what you've been saying in interviews and on social media and in your statement that you just put out, which I'll share, I think I already did, is, listen, there has to be consequences. There has to be justice for specifically, obviously, trying to overthrow a democratically election and as well as the insurrection. Is it that? Are there other specific issues that you're more concerned about?
Of course, there are other specific issues, and we would want to talk about voting rights, women's rights, racism, police shootings. We want to discuss all of those things, but they're all of a piece. And if we allow our democracy to fall to people who are willing to do a violent insurrection, to overthrow the government of the United States, all those other issues tumble with them. So we need consequences for this, or it will happen again. And look what's happening right now, or look what's not happening right now. There hasn't been a single indictment. There hasn't been a single subpoena of a Republican politician that was involved with January 6th. And a lot of them were. Over 50 candidates who were involved with that are running for office. And look at the kind of person that the Republicans are putting up. In Georgia, they're putting up a candidate who put a gun to his wife's head.
Right. Yeah.
That the kind of person that we want in our office? No, I think not. And so we need public hearings about January 6th under oath, the way that we had in Watergate. And you asked me one question and I'm going on and on.
I think that's the most important point is what you said. We can't get to solving or at least working on the climate crisis, economic inequality, labor rights, and all of the issues that you mentioned and more if we don't have a decent, much less vibrant or healthy democracy. And that's what we're worried about losing in these midterm elections. I mean, I'm glad your book is out. I'm glad you're promoting it, but I'm also glad you're spending now most of your time on this activism, because in the run up to the midterm elections, it seems, Don, that people feel comfortable that Donald Trump is gone. People on the left, progressives, Democrats, or as I call them, people who live on Earth One. So he's gone. So we don't need to really worry anymore. I feel like we're resting.
He's not gone. How can you say he's gone when we see him every day?
Agreed. I agree with you.
When he's out there spewing his lies, he's the carnival barker president, and he's not gone. I think he will run again, and I think we're going to have to fight him, and we're going to have to beat him again. And it's not just him; it's all his political spawn and his imitators, that are out there trying to do their best Trump act. Some of them are good at it; some of them are simply buffoons. He's spawned a whole generation now of these people.
I hope that you're working with, whether you can talk about it or not, specific congressmen or senators, like someone like Jamie Raskin or Sheldon Whitehouse or somebody like that, because you're so effective with this media. You're so good at editing, putting together these videos, producing them, turning them around, and them being effective. The idea that you would be working with them would seem to make sense. Is that kosher?
Not going to comment on any particular relationships or partnerships, but we're our own thing. I'm going to do my own thing with Shane. We're our own operation. Having said that, the other day we put out a call saying we're trying to build an army, and the response has been overwhelming. Tens of thousands of people from all areas of life, including, yes, politics, media, show business, doctors, lawyers, working people have responded, and we've been overwhelmed by that, and we'll be utilizing those relationships.
Yeah, great. Well, I think that what you're doing is awesome. I think that we have to stand up to bullies. That's what my show's name has been. Stand up to. You have to punch back in a way and play to some extent. the game they're playing. And it's a really hard thing to do because we're always having to react to manufactured arguments so often. Like, I can't believe I have to react to CRT. I can't believe that's a thing that I have to react to.
I know, it's unbelievable, but that's the thing. We need to change the momentum. Do you know what I mean? We don't necessarily always have to wait for the attack. We do have to react. We do have to respond, no question. But there are times we should be getting off first, both in the positive sense and the negative sense. We should be getting off first to talk about what the Democratic Party's doing, what President Biden is doing, the positive things, let people know what they're doing for the average person in America. And then we also can get off attacking the other side proactively. We don't necessarily always have to be in a responsive mode.
Let me just ask you about how it's been for you to be so outspoken. You're a best-selling author. You're very, very well-known guy at this point in your career, in your life. You have a huge following on social media. And when you put yourself out there like this, I mean, I already touched on it just briefly, but what has been the reaction to you? Do you get all kinds of things, social media, emails? Has anybody dropped a head of an animal in your home?
Nobody's actually dropped a head of an animal in my home. I do get that kind of response. You know, look, the overwhelming majority of the responses have been positive and supportive. But of course, I make people mad. You know, the Proud Boys, the white supremacists, the hardcore Trumpies don't like it. Yeah. And they've done all kinds of things. You know, they put out fake Don Winslow accounts to say, as if I'm saying horrible things about people. They do, you know, make threats. And so, yeah, but that comes with the territory. If you're going to enter that ring, you're going to expect some of those punches thrown.
Well, I'm so happy that you've entered the ring and that you've decided to stay in the ring. But you have written this new book. It's out today, City on Fire. And it's a part of another trilogy. You've already written one, right? Was there more than one trilogy? And so
one trilogy, yeah.
You've got the sequel's coming out next year and the year after. So it's a great plan and it's a great series. I'm absolutely loving it. And it's a fascinating story because you're a fascinating story, Don Winslow. You became a successful writer, like what, in your 50s?
Yeah, I think I'd had about 12 published books and $37 in the bank.
Right. So you were making a little money selling your books, but you weren't this major success that you obviously are now. But before any of those books published, who the hell were you? You lived everywhere. You did everything. You lived like 400 lives. You're like Tristan from Legends of the Fall, except for not at all. You're not at all like him, but not I can't stop.
Yeah. I wish, I wish. Yeah, look, man, I was trying to make a living, I always wanted to be a writer since I was a kid, but the world doesn't stamp your passport that way, And so I wanted to make a living. I'm trying to find some light here as the window shifts, as the light comes through. So I wanted to do interesting things. And so, yeah, I was a private detective. I was a photographic safari guide in Africa. I directed Shakespeare plays for international high school students at Oxford summers,
Yeah.
I did all kinds of goofy things, but they were all interesting. They were all fun. I enjoyed them.
And for this new book, you went back to your roots because I didn't know that you're born in New York, but grew up in Rhode Island, where I guess you now spend half the year or something.
Half the year, yeah.
And I didn't know about the Irish and Italian mafia. I mean, I knew a little bit because of a couple films, but basically you wrote this series over 20 years with parallels to Greek and Roman literature and starting in, taking place where you grew up. This is based on a lot of real life people that apparently you were around in the 80s in Rhode Island, the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, 60s, 70s, 80s. I was a kid, and the mob guys were always on the periphery. You were aware of them. It was in those days a major part of the culture. Now it's since declined, quite a bit, as it has, of course, nationwide. But they were the stuff and essence of my life. And when I started rather late in life to read works like the Iliad and the Odyssey. The parallels just struck me. The Trojan War began in an argument over a woman. And there was a very similar incident that actually happened in New England between Irish and Italian gang guys. And so that just struck me like a slap in the face. Like, I know this story already. I didn't need to read it in the classics. I saw it. And so I thought, man, could I write 3 crime novels that would stand alone just as crime novels without any reference to the classics at all, but follow the stories and characters of those great classics and those themes? And hopefully the answer is yes.
How much did you know about them growing up there? How much of City on Fire is or are things that really, really happened? How much are the characters based on actual men and women?
Almost all of it. It's not based on, for the most part, particular men and women, right? It's definitely a work of fiction, but it's based on types of men and women, certainly, that I knew growing up.
So when you're writing about, you're a crime writer, you've been writing about all kinds of different types of organizations and criminals, obviously the border and the drug cartels. What is the parallel, and I think there is one, between organized mobs and mafia in the United States? You're writing about the Irish and Italian, and the Mexican and Central and South American drug cartels.
Listen, there are a lot of differences, and we can go over those if you'd like. But all organized crime, of course, is based on money, power, and turf. And those, of course, are all related. So at the end of the day, it's almost fair to say that they're all based on money. Another similarity is that organized crime groups tend to be ethnically based. Now, that's exaggerated in the media and fiction because there are great exceptions to that. But they tend to be ethnically based. In the United States, they tended to be ethnically based around immigrant groups, right? That arrived here and had to find a place to, against great opposition, to set their feet and to make a life. Most of those people, 99%, made it honestly. Another 1% took another route.
Right.
So when you're looking at organized crime, there are certain things that are always in common. And then there are things that are distinct to those particular cultures. So writing about it, whether it was the Mexican cartels or the New England mobs or whatever, was a matter of getting to know those particular cultures so that you could make it real to the reader.
And you certainly know how to make it real to the reader because you're from there. You weren't in the mob, but you were from there. You saw it, and you have so many references. It's really my favorite place, I think, because of my childhood. We spent a lot of time there in New England.
Okay.
So many references to it that I want to try to get to. But one more question about that, because I think as I'm reading the book, I'm like, boy, Don is like taking a lot of liberties with some of the words in here and some of the ethnic references and so on. And the ones I'm talking about. Yeah. And as a Sicilian, married, I'm a quarter Sicilian, but my wife is half, and we go there every year. And if you say that they are, mafia, that is the deepest insult you could say. You do make a point, obviously, to say they are the exception to their people, the Irish and Italian criminals. Sure. But do you worry or about getting in trouble for playing, talking about these types of Italians, these types of Irish? And by the way, why are we so fascinated with them?
Well, for one thing, I write crime stories.
Well, there you go.
So the characters in my books are mostly going to be criminals.
Right.
And I hasten to say to my many Italian friends, and I'm Irish, look, no offense, that's the story that I write, So I'm going to use...
Why not write a nice immigrant story, Don?
Because I am a crime writer. I live in that genre very happily and very proudly. So people need to understand. Now, you do try to give it some balance. I remember in the Sopranos series, they kind of went out of their way to have dinner conversations about exactly the issue that you're bringing up. I write very tight to the bone crime stories. So there's that. I forgot the second half of your question.
Why are we so obsessed with organized crime in our literature, in our film, and in our lives?
I think it's a power fantasy. Look, again, 99% of the people are law-abiding people, right? And so when a problem comes up, we seek it through lawful means, a solution. In The Godfather, Marlon Brando sits with a cat on his lap in a make it thus world. Make it thus. Make that happen. Make that happen. You alluded to, a head in the bed, right? I think that's a fantasy for all of us. It'd be nice to get that parking ticket fixed, the noisy neighbor spoken to, or on a deeper level when people have really serious, injustices done to them and have to go through this, labyrinth of legal procedures and may or may not get justice. There's a fantasy about just going to some guy, right, and saying, help me out here. Make that problem go away, get me justice. And so I think that is seductive on a big level. I think the other reason is that these crime stories, and particularly organized crime stories, are almost invariably about conflict, and that conflict is out there and it's very open. And I think that is both interesting and cathartic.
It's also really interesting because you often hear about how family is the most important thing. Certainly you always hear about that in the Italian mafia, that they have this code, which is all bullshit.
All bullshit.
And in your book, it starts with these guys being the closest of friends, closer than family. And then obviously, I don't think it's anything to give away. Things break down between these Irish and Italian friends in Rhode Island. How true is that they start that close, but
Very
they
true.
end up...
Very true, based on real stuff. And that's why I love writing, or loved in this case, writing about the New England crime scene. If you write about New York, guys may or may not know each other. In Providence, everybody knew each other, right? You're chock-a-block. That state's the size of a Walmart parking lot, right? You're a half an hour from anywhere, okay? And so everybody in those days in the crime world knew each other. There were intermarriages. They go to weddings, funerals, parties together. The beach party, which kicks off this book.
Yeah.
And so, no, extremely realistic in that regard.
I love every reference that you make to New England. It's so visceral in my life. However, I did not I agree with you, but didn't realize that there was an authentic clam chowder. But you disparage New England clam chowder in a way I've never heard a New Englander until I realize the authenticity, at least according to Rhode Islanders.
Yes. Glad you brought this up, Pete. Thank you.
I know I've never seen. You've been so angry about the dwindling democracy, but this really, you put it in the book. You're filled with rage.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it could be the end of life as we know it. I'm a chowder. Look, I'm a chowderhead, right? I'm from a little fishing village in New England, and I'm going to insist to you that the only proper way of making chowder is with clear clam broth. It is not with cream, which is sort of disgusting baby puke. And for God's sakes, it is not this abomination called Manhattan clam chowder made with tomato sauce, which is an offense to God. But the problem is, Pete, that there are only literally 2 or 3 places, 2 or 3 restaurants in this little sliver of Southern Rhode Island where I'm from that still make legitimate, ethical, moral, and blessed clam chowder.
Well, you've said that you've been accused of being divisive on the political front, but I feel like what you've just said to me is the most divisive thing you may have ever uttered anywhere.
Do you think I've launched chowder wars now? There's culture war and there's chowder war.
I'm posting this tomorrow, which is the day your book comes out, and the day you will be canceled once and for all
by the cream chowder people. It's all right with me. Listen, I invite I invite them to come, and I will get them real chowder. They'll never go back. They will never go back. They will thank me. They will say, Don, we're so incredibly grateful. I can't believe that you've changed our lives.
Talk about a video that'll go viral. Someone tasting the clear broth chowder for the first time. Let me tie it all together, Winslow.
That's an idea, man. I might do that.
Yeah. I think it'll be a real. It'll show that you transparently really want to open minds. You want to open minds.
Transparency is the word, because we're talking about clear broth chowder. So transparency.
If you say so, boss.
It's exactly the issue. I'll be happy to be the godfather of genuine chowder.
Let me tie it all together. City on Fire, about the Irish and Italian mafia, organized crime. You kind of psychoanalyze why we are obsessed with them in terms of power. But we started by talking about politics. You've written and talked all about Donald Trump and his family and his attraction to interest in people like Vladimir Putin, who you've also talked about, and other authoritarian leaders. Donald Trump has been described as worshiping mafia bosses, working with them and acting just like one. I think it's a perfect description of him. Tie it all together for me by talking about, these types of men particularly, and why they gain and keep power and what needs to be done.
Well, I think Donald Trump has a sort of mob boss fantasy. Now, if the Trumps were a mob family, they would not be the Corleones. I would, more or less say that they would come out of the gang that couldn't shoot straight. Although I don't know how you have two sons and both of them are Fredo, by the way. That's
hurtful. Really
that's
mean, Don. Really mean.
But I'm not here to be nice. Look, people like Putin, like Donald Trump, at the end of the day, have extraordinarily weak egos. It's not strong egos we need to be afraid of, whether it's with a political leader, with a cop, with a military person, with anybody on the street. It's the weak egos that do a lot of damage because they are endlessly needy of praise. That's why this guy just loves rallies, right? Love me, love me, love me, love me, love me, to a person who is essentially unlovable, a narcissistic sociopath, and he can't get enough of that stuff. Putin is the same way. So little wonder that Trump would admire Putin, because he aspires to that sort of high-level mobsterism, How did he get powerful? Simplistic answers to complicated problems that people can just go, what's the solution to immigration? A wall. Duh. Obviously not, but one syllable. Right. So what do we do about it? We speak the truth. We speak it loudly. We call it what it is. We don't talk about, Donald Trump acted, against the norms. We say Donald Trump committed crimes. We don't say Donald Trump attempted to subvert American democracy, although that's true. We say Donald Trump committed treason. That's what we do about it. And we talk in those plain, simple terms.
Do you think that our collective lack of ability to pay attention for long periods of time because of social media, internet, and videos being everywhere makes it so much harder for us to come to these solutions? You grew up as a little boy getting books from the library, reading nonstop. You've written so many books. And I don't know how you yourself don't get distracted while you're writing, or what your practice is for reading and so on. But it's hard to beat the simple one-word answer that is appealing to our tribal brains. That's hard to combat. What do we do when the truth requires a few more words, maybe even a book on an issue like immigration?
It's tough, isn't it? Look, because there are no easy answers to issues like immigration. There just aren't. We can break it down into bites. You know what I mean? We can take one thing at a time. We can ask people, do you think this is right? If your answer is no, okay, let's go to the next step. Do you think it's right to treat another human being as a lesser thing? No. Okay, then how do you feel about a child at the border? I'm convinced, if any of these kids showed up on the doorsteps of many of these people who are anti-immigration, they'd take care of that kid.
Well, I have an even better one for you, which is my neighbor across the street's, constantly watching Fox News. And, these people are crazy. They're talking about immigration, yet they have a whole crew that does their lawn every single week. And I'm not positive they're undocumented, but I'm almost positive they are.
Right.
And they're doing work at their house. And that's true of almost all of us. Yes. So if you want to scream about the issue, but they're working for you at a really affordable price. That's almost a better example than what you just said.
It is actually a better example than what I just said. And also, we can say, look, immigration doesn't cost American jobs. Immigration builds American jobs because immigrants have to eat, buy clothes, rent, buy houses, all of that kind of thing. It creates income. So if immigrants are not responsible for more crime than native-born Americans, they have a crime rate 1/5 of native-born Americans. So again, you can take some of these facts, you can take them one at a time, and you can build from there.
Well, I love talking to you, Don. I love catching up with you. The book is so good. I don't like that you've made me like a mob boss, Danny Ryan. I don't like that you humanize these people and make me see them as humans. That makes me feel uncomfortable. Do you have anything you want to apologize?
No, I don't want to apologize. Listen, Pete, I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. Always, it's the last thing in the world I'd want to do. But it's my job. It's my job to bring people into a world that they otherwise couldn't go into and see it through those people's eyes. That's what I do for a living.
I was obviously joking, but on that joke, what do you say to the parents that are at my BOE meeting saying, you're making my kids uncomfortable by making them feel bad about who they are as white people? What do you say? What would you say to them?
Do I make kids feel bad as white people?
No. I'm not saying that you say that. I'm saying, maybe somebody can blame you.
You lost me, Teet.
When there's this idea that children are being made uncomfortable in their schools by learning about history. This is something I hear a lot. And I'm wondering what your response would be to a parent who's worried about what their kids are learning in school. Because my answer is, that's not a school thing. That's a parenting thing. And school is supposed to make you uncomfortable. Learning makes you uncomfortable. You've traveled the world, Don. You've seen it all. I'm sure you've been uncomfortable.
I have been uncomfortable. I'm constantly uncomfortable. Here's what I say to those parents. One, history is history. You're entitled to your own opinions. You're not entitled to your own facts. If we're going to teach history, let's teach history that's as accurate as we know. Okay, things always change, by the way. We always learn more. New sources come up, all kinds of things. But if we're going to teach kids history, let's teach them the real history. Two, let's stop underestimating our kids, please. They're not stupid. They're not so, fragile that they can't handle an idea that is maybe opposite of what they thought. I feel the same way about readers. Let's not underestimate our readers. They can handle things, and so let history be what it is. And the kids will deal with it. And then if they're having a difficulty with it, sure, talk to your parents about it. But, let's stop underestimating.
Well said, sir. And congratulations. City on Fire is available now, and I can't wait for the sequels. But everybody go get it and support all of Don's work. Don, great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a good time.
Okay, there he goes. That is Don Winslow. Very happy to have that guy. He's got almost 1 million followers on Twitter. Don Winslow Book Club. DonWinslow.com, at Don Winslow, and the new book is City on Fire. It's the first of 3. What else can I tell you? That was awesome. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully you did as well. And we always enjoy when we get to talk with Eric Siegel, who I reached out to yesterday as well, to talk about the Supreme Court hearing that was argued, or Supreme Court arguments yesterday. about the praying football coach. Supreme Court majority was sympathetic to the coach who prayed at midfield. A lot of questions about his actions, and the school district's reason for disciplining him might lead to a narrow resolution, says Robert Barnes at the Washington Post. The headline at Vox was, "The religious right had a great day at the Supreme Court. The justices may take a bite out of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause, or they might simply take an enormous bite out of it." The headline at NPR, "The Supreme Court ponders the right to pray on the 50-yard line." And CNN headline, "Supreme Court conservatives appear sympathetic to former high school coach who led prayers after games." So those are just some of the headlines. Eric Siegel is the constitutional law scholar at Georgia State University, of course. He's the host of the Supreme Myths podcast now. He wrote a book by the same name. His second book is Originalism as Faith. You can find him on Twitter at eSpinSiegel. Also follow him on TikTok. That's right, you heard me. And read his most recent blog post about that today at Dorf on Law. It's titled "The Roberts Court and the Erasing of the Establishment Clause." Here is my conversation with Eric Siegel, who I called late yesterday afternoon.
Hello.
Hey now.
Hello, Mr. Radio Voice.
There he is, everybody. The legal eagle, Eric Siegel. Hey, so what happened? You were to the basketball game, and there was a bomb threat. What happened?
Actually, there's a different story at that basketball game I want to tell.
Oh, tell that, and then we'll get into the court.
If we have time, I think it's a good enough story to tell.
Oh, you want to save that for the end?
Yeah, let's do that at the end. So it's like 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
It's about race and America and what deep shit we're all in.
All right. Well, do you want to talk about the former high school assistant football coach who?
Jesus Christ.
That's a prayer.
My reaction to this case is, Jesus Christ.
A prayer. A coach took a knee and said a prayer after a football game, and somehow it's made it to the Supreme Court.
Yes, but let's back up a lot and discuss. Let's get there through examining what the Roberts Court is doing to religion in this country. Can we do it that way?
How far you don't want to go back before the Roberts Court to talk about the role?
I want to. I can do this relatively quickly, and people. And I just published a blog post.
All right, folks, listen up. Read the blog post, and I'll link to that in the show notes. But folks, strap in. Siegel, go ahead. Yep. You've got the floor. I'll sit back.
So not too long ago, the Supreme Court believed that there were two parts of the religion clauses of the First Amendment. One part says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, which basically means don't give too much support to religion. How much is too much, we'll tell you over time. And nor make the government make a law prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So there's two parts. Everyone knows this: the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. The Establishment Clause basically says the government should not support religion in ways that are offensive or that that are offensive to non-believers or people of other faiths. And the Free Exercise Clause is the one that says you can't put Jews in jail, you can't tax Muslims more than Christians, et cetera, et cetera. Not too long ago, they believed that both of those clauses had meaning. What the Roberts Court has done, and the title of my piece that's out right now on Dorf on Law, is it has erased the Establishment Clause. So this is what I mean by that. I can do this very quickly. Not long ago, the Supreme Court said if you are a federal or state government and want to give religious schools computers or text or erasers, chalk, equipment, playgrounds, whatever, for a long time the court said you couldn't, except for books. Then it said basically you could if you want to, if it's the same assistance you're giving to private non-religious schools, if you want to. So if you're a state and you want to help kids in private schools because you think all your kids should get a better education, you can do that. You don't have to give that aid to religious schools because that's using tax dollars to support mostly Catholic and Jewish schools. Right. There are some other ones, but all right. The Roberts Court has taken all of that and turned it around and said the Free Exercise Clause requires the states to give aid to religious schools if they give aid to non-religious schools. Horrific, terrible set of cases. That's one example of the court erasing the Establishment Clause and elevating the Free Exercise Clause to a place of religious supremacy, not religious.
A lot of court scholars would take issue with you saying erasing the Establishment.
No, they wouldn't.
No,
they wouldn't.
You're saying they would not.
Almost 90% of religion law experts in this country today would say the court has effectively, the Roberts Court, is in the process of erasing the Establishment Clause and elevating the Free Exercise Clause. So
I'm surprised you're not referencing some religious law expert, I can't believe you haven't said Judge Posner's name yet. I'm
not mentioning him in this entire podcast.
No way.
Not once. How do you feel?
Oh, well, if you bet on that, then you've won something big.
So there have been many, many cases in the Supreme Court on what we do with religious symbols. I'm getting to the coach, I promise. Religious symbols on governmental property. And through the Rehnquist Court, which wasn't exactly the Warren Court, right? I mean, we're talking about the Rehnquist Court here, 5 Republicans. They went through a bunch of different cases, all of which are confusing, and I'm not defending them. But the idea was you can't put a permanent cross on a government building. You can't have a Christmas display of the creche and nothing else prominently. And then again, there are 10 Commandments cases. And the bottom line of all of those cases was the court was trying to articulate a line where if you have a cross, a menorah, and a symbol of Islam, or you have secular symbols and religious symbols all put together, then maybe it's okay. Maybe it wasn't. Case by case approach. So in the most recent case, before the one I'm going to talk about, there was 10 commandments in a courthouse in Alabama and 10 commandments at the Capitol in Texas. The one in Texas had been there 100 years and was surrounded by other symbols. The 10 commandments in Alabama was put there by a conservative judge who wanted to make a point. The court struck down the 10 commandments in the courthouse. It upheld the 10 commandments on Texas. And it was all very complicated. Well, the court, and that's because the court was trying to figure out the Establishment Clause, what it allows, what it doesn't. That's not an easy issue, Peter. I'm not saying it is, but they were trying to police it the best they could. Not anymore. And in a case a few years ago, there was a 40-foot cross by itself on public land in Maryland, paid for by taxpayers, maintained by Maryland. 40-foot cross, no menorahs, no other symbols, just the cross. And Justice Alito said, I'm not making this up, Pete, Justice Alito said, in this context, the cross is not a religious symbol, which of course is absurd and insane. Okay. But then he said, removing the cross would show hostility to religion. He said all of that in the same paragraph.
He then said it could be a plus symbol for mathematics. Listen, it's open to interpretation. That seems like...
Well, what you just said is what we call external critique. He's just wrong in saying the cross is not a religious symbol, which of course he is. What I'm saying is internal critique. You can't it's inconsistent in itself. You can't say it's not a religious symbol and then say removing it would be hostility to religion.
Could be just notification of an upcoming intersection.
Right. So that's another example of the court giving up on the Establishment Clause. So they've given up on it in terms of policing parochial school aid. So your tax dollars can go to religious schools. And must go to religious schools if they go to secular schools. They've given up policing religious symbols on government property. There's a case right near your hometown. You could probably throw a stone and almost get there. Greece, New York, where they had Christian prayers at their town council meetings like 2 years in a row. All Christian prayers, no other prayers. The court upheld that, again, abandoning any Establishment Clause concerns at all. All of which, and at the same time, they are making the Free Exercise Clause really powerful by, for example, you and I discussed this before, using the Free Exercise Clause to stop state legislation relating to the pandemic, right? We've all heard about the shadow docket and how the court has overturned California's rules and New York's rules and so on and so forth. So what they're doing with all this, Pete, is they're saying the Establishment Clause doesn't matter at all. Help religion as much as you want. And the Free Exercise Clause matters a lot and requires you to treat religion equal to or better than non-religion, all of which reflects the Christian values of the 6 Fox News justices on the Supreme Court. And then we get to today. So In the early 1960s, the court held that teacher-led prayer in public school classrooms was unconstitutional. A friend of mine who I really respect, a law professor at University of Richmond Law School named Corinna Lane, shout out, great person, actually wrote a law review article in one of the prestigious law reviews saying it's not Roe, it's not even Brown, it's not what you think. The most controversial cases of all time measured by public reaction in the 5 years after the case was those cases of the early 1960s where the court said you couldn't have teacher-led prayer in public schools. Yeah, it's really interesting. Whether she's right or wrong doesn't matter. What is clearly true is these were incredibly controversial cases at the time. In any event, that's 1962, and that's the Warren Court, right? And then later on, Justice Kennedy, Republican, writes an opinion saying no prayers at graduation ceremonies. Big case, made conservatives really mad. And then after that, Justice Kennedy wrote another opinion, again, Republican.
Like saying a prayer at the ceremony, high school or graduation or something like that?
No prayers at football games, official prayers. Now, let's be clear, Pete. Any teacher and any student can pray quietly and privately whenever they want to, as long as they don't disturb anybody else. And I would defend that person's right to do that to my death. But what the court has held is teacher-led prayer, school-led prayer is simply not allowed in public schools, which, by the way, doesn't that make sense? Now it's time for you to say yes.
I mean, I'm trying to think of the arguments.
There aren't any.
And
of course,
I mean, I think the one that I always go to is the one that you've made, I feel like, several times, that if you're not of that religion or of any religion and all of your classmates are saying a prayer, or
God forbid, or you're on the football team and you want playing time and your coach is leading a prayer and you don't want to be part of the prayer.
Yeah, you don't, much less, you could be increasingly anti-religious and be like, I'm not taking a knee or doing any of the bowing the head. I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to be indoctrinated into your beliefs of any sort. I mean, you could.
Now, let's be clear. It's not these school districts most of the time were not, or teachers and coaches, they weren't making students pray. But of course, you're going to feel like you have to if your teacher's doing it. It's just Justice Kennedy said this, not some bleeding heart liberal, not Justice Brennan, not Justice Thurgood Marshall, not Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This is Justice Kennedy, a devout Catholic, saying prayer in school is inherently coercive. Is that really a hard concept?
It's inherently coercive.
It is. Having a teacher-led prayer or a coach-led prayer is coercive, even if you're allowed not to pray. It just is. For the reasons you just said, we're agreeing. You sound confused. What you just said is true. If I'm a football player and my coach is leading a prayer and I'm not involved in that prayer, I might feel like he's going to hold it against me, right? What are you confused about?
I mean, I think that's a possibility. I certainly don't think it's a guarantee. I mean, I think the issue is. Go ahead.
We don't want Pete. We don't want our kids to have that choice. A kid is sitting there going, he's having a Christian prayer. I'm Jewish. I don't want to pray to a Christian God. But if I don't, he may not play me next game.
Right.
Do we want that even entering a student's mind? No. I'm still confused why you're confused about this.
I'm not confused about it. I honestly haven't read enough about the arguments that have been made, and usually present both sides, and I'm just not that prepared.
Right. Okay. Well, as a public policy matter, there aren't two sides. Prayer shouldn't be in public schools. Period. Full stop. Leaving aside the constitutional questions, they just don't have prayer in public school. Period. Full stop. If you want to pray, go to private school. Leave that aside. Whatever I think, that is the current law today. As of today, there's no prayers in public school. No teacher-led prayer, no school-led prayer, football games, graduation ceremonies, classrooms. Anybody can pray quietly to themselves anytime they want. All right.
Right.
So this football coach in Washington State has this habit of praying at the 50-yard line immediately after a game is over, while he's still on duty. He conceded in the briefs that he was still on duty, until the players leave the field, go to the locker room, go home. He's in charge. He's still on duty. So he's being paid by the public school district to be a football coach of a public school, and he's praying on the 50-yard line. And eventually, of course, other students come to pray with him. Other team pray with him, fans. And then people complain, and it's a whole big deal. And that's the case the Supreme Court heard today. Now, one thing about this case that's interesting is this coach's father got sick. The father lives in Florida. This coach and his wife left Washington State and have been living in Florida for the last 3 years.
All right.
You might ask me then, why is this case even at the Supreme Court? Because the case is moot. He's not. he's in Florida. He's not in Seattle.
Oh, and you can't bring it. You can't bring a case if someone's not being injured actively.
Right. Well, you can in this Supreme Court because they just want to issue this. They just want to issue pro-religion cases. They don't care where they find them. So you can in this Supreme Court. They shouldn't even have heard this case. But we'll leave that. That's just a footnote.
Okay. They shouldn't have heard this case because he doesn't live in
He no
Washington.
longer works for the school district. He doesn't live there.
Right.
And now his lawyer said something about there's no official record of him saying if they were to offer me a job back, I would go and take it. There's no official record entry of that in this case. So as far as the court knows, he's never going back. And if he's never going back, there's no case or controversy. But that's an aside. The Roberts Court doesn't care about cases and controversies anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, I know. There's so many things wrong. So here's the deal. Prior law of the Supreme Court says that football coaches cannot lead students in prayers. Period. That's what the prior law is. Now, this guy is saying, I wasn't leading anybody in a prayer, and that's fair. He was just going to the 50-yard line while on duty. And instead of saying something in his mind, thanking God, whatever, he was audibly saying a prayer, which led to other people saying the prayer, which then leads to our problem, which is some of the players will take part in the prayer. There's a great picture of it on the internet. Some of the players will take part of the prayer. But if you don't want to, and you're not part of those players, will this coach hold it against you? Well, this coach went all the way to the fucking Supreme Court to prove a point. Do you think he's going to hold it against you? Well, him litigating this case for 5 years or 7 years after he left the state suggests that maybe he cares a lot about who prays and who doesn't, right? So the oral argument today was one of the most embarrassing oral arguments I've heard in the last 10 years.
Really? I mean, I know you listened to the whole thing?
Yep. Live tweeted the whole thing.
Oh, I didn't. I wasn't on Twitter during that time.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Yes,
so
you would have enjoyed it. But there were so many highlights.
I saw a few of the first ones, I guess, I shared, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one thing is they kept Justice Alito raised some absurd hypothetical about what if the coach put political signs up at his house. I'm like, what? Of course the coach can put up any kind of signs he wants at his. He can put up "I love Jesus" at his house. What does that do to anything? So that was very strange, and that kind of stopped the court. You could tell that kind of stopped. Like, what are you talking about, Justice Alito? Many of the conservative justices viewed this case not as an establishment clause case, which it is, Pete, but as an employment discrimination case. So the school district said to him, after the game, if you want to pray, go to a corner of the field by yourself and pray. Or go to your office and pray. Or we'll give you some space in the building to go pray by yourself for a few minutes if that's what you want. What you can't do is pray loudly on the 50-yard line while you are on duty as a public school coach. And he refused those offers. So the facts are terrible for that side. So the conservative justices kept making up bizarre hypotheticals about political signs at his house, or what if after the game he just did I don't know what it's called, Pete. I'm sorry. When you cross yourself, you're Catholic. You
sign
cross
of the
yourself,
cross.
whatever that is. What if you just want to do that gesture? Is that allowed? Of course that's allowed. You're not bothering anybody. You do 2 seconds and you're over. So that was all very strange. Justice Barrett gets the worst question of the decade award.
No, come on.
She does. It's even worse than her abortion question and then her adoption question during the remember we talked about this during the Dobbs case when she asked about Roe versus Wade and why the court might overrule it, saying, well, adoption policies have changed, so the burden on women is less, right? That was the worst question of the decade so far.
Oh, God, yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
Did that give you PTSD a little bit?
Yes, I remember.
Yes. Yeah, so this is not as controversial as that, but it's dumber. In fact, this question is so dumb. I did a 20-second TikTok on it because it's just so dumb. I had to.
It's such a dumb question. You took it to TikTok.
I had to scream. I couldn't help it. I couldn't scream at Sweeney, my dog. That wouldn't be fair. He was with me at the time. Though I did talk to Sweeney about it. This is what she asked, Pete. So before the Constitution prohibits anything, as you know, other than actual slavery, there has to be state action. In other words, if I have a dinner party I'm allowed to say only Republicans show up, or only Trumpists show up, or only Biden supporters. It's my property. I can do what I want. There has to be a state action, a state law, state something, right? That's just part of constitutional law. I can't violate your freedom of speech. Only New York or the federal government can violate your freedom of speech.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
This is the question she asked. It's so dumb I can't even say it without crying. This is a public school teacher who the record has stipulated, and when you stipulate something for the record in the Supreme Court, it's stipulated. It means you concede the point. He's on duty right after a football game, still responsible for the safety of his students, saying a prayer in the middle of the field. And her question was, well, where's the state action in all of this? Yeah. I think what she was trying to say is, although it's clearly state action because she didn't say this, but I think what she was trying to say was, we all know that when you're a football coach, Pete, the football coach at your daughter's high school, when he's coaching the football team, is he acting as part of the government? What's the answer?
Yes.
Yes, of course he is. When he is leading his team off the field into the locker room to give them a post-game speech, is he acting as a state actor?
It depends on if he's like rubbing their shoulders.
He's acting as a state actor, even if he's rubbing the shoulders.
Okay.
He's just acting as a bad state actor. But he's still acting as a...
Hey, coach, listen, you work for the state. Get your hands off me.
It's unbelievable. Of course he's a state actor. It's the dumbest question ever. He admitted he was on the job when he was doing the prayer. So I think so I don't know what she was thinking, because it's so dumb that like a first-year law student wouldn't think that. But I think what she was thinking is she wants to try, and this is where the court is heading. So the reason I ended up both live tweeting this argument and writing a blog post, and that's up now, that I wrote today, even when I had a class today, is because I feel strongly about this.
Yeah.
What the court is doing is it's erasing the Establishment Clause out of the Constitution. It's taking it out of the Constitution at the same 5-year period where it is greatly enlarging the Free Exercise Clause. And what that does is it merges church and state. That's what it does. So I think there are 5, maybe 6 justices on the Supreme Court who want to start the process of rolling back all of those cases I talked about at the beginning.
Right.
And that's the end game here. And the point I want to make is all of this undoing of the Establishment Clause that's been going on for a long time now. Reversing cases, distinguishing cases that can't be distinguished, all that stuff. Pete, your listeners have listened to me long enough to understand the significance of what I'm about to say. The text of the First Amendment has not changed since 1789. Same text. We've had no new historical discoveries. There's no new documents found. In the 60s and 70s and 80s and even the 90s, the court wrestled with a lot of difficult Establishment Clause questions about how much the court can assist religion. I'm sorry, how much the government can assist religion. Whether it's parochial school aid, whether it's religious symbols on governmental property, whether it's prayer in school. And those are hard cases. Don't get me wrong here. some of those cases but there's some reasonable disagreements we could have. And the court was having them, so that the 10 Commandments case I talked to you about was 5-4, both case. Justice Breyer wrote both opinions. One opinion, he upheld the 10 Commandments. Another, he said it was unconstitutional. He was a swing vote. And it was very...
That was posting the 10 Commandments on public property?
One was in the courthouse, one was on the Texas State Capitol. Yeah. My point is, they were wrestling in good faith with the Establishment Clause. What this court is doing, a court allegedly made up of textualists, is literally ignoring the Establishment Clause.
Right.
It's as if it's not even there.
Textualists, originalists ignoring the text.
Yes.
That they so profoundly defend.
And by the way, tons of precedent too. Right. And I can't stress this enough. The 2 prayer in school cases in public schools were in court, 1962 and 63. But most of the other cases, like involving prayers at football games and graduation ceremonies, religious symbols on governmental property, all the other cases and the parochial school aid cases, most of them were not the Warren Court or even the Berger Court. This is the Rehnquist Court. This is 5 Republicans. And, it's not. I'm sorry. It's 4 Republicans and Justice Stevens. Excuse me. In some cases, it's 6 Republicans.
The Warren Court, by the way, you've said it a few times, but in case people don't know, it's considered probably the most liberal court in U.S. history.
Well,
that's why you keep...
Not probably. Okay. It was the most liberal court. And basically, it's the only liberal court we ever had. 15 years of it. That's it.
15 years of that court makeup.
More or less. 10 to 20. Pick a number. So my point is they're doing all of this with no change in text or history. So I ask your listeners again, if changing judges changes law, do we know what law is? Do we have a rule of law or a rule of people?
Right.
And when it comes to the Supreme Court, the answer is obvious. We have a rule of people. And you know what stops judges from being the rule of people but not the rule of law? It's only one thing. Well, mostly one thing. Precedent. In other words, when judges are bound by decisions of other judges,
the
prior judges, those prior judges' cases are the law. And if a judge today says, you know what, I read this case from 20 years ago, I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong, but we have to have a rule of law in this country, and I'm not going to overturn it unless it's absolutely necessary. Something like that. The Roberts Court doesn't care. They are just, when it comes to the Establishment Clause, they do not care. They are taking it out of the Constitution. And that's just the rule of people, not the rule of law. That's what it is. And in this case, it's the rule of very religious people, and it's sad. And I'm done.
Yes. The rule. It'll be It's interesting to see how this will potentially play out in life, whether it be in school or other public places.
So my friend Chris Sprigman at NYU, who has been as supportive of my court is not a court thesis of any law professor in the country, and who has been very supportive of stripping the court of jurisdiction. And for nonpartisan, he's a progressive, but he hasn't come at it from that perspective. Neither do I. We both think this institution has been broken from the beginning. It was broken when Brutus, pen name, complained about it in 1787 before the Constitution was ratified. He said to me today on Twitter, which was interesting, all of this is happening. The Roberts Court is making religion stronger and giving and letting the government give more aid to religion and making the government give aid to religion, et cetera, at a time when America is becoming much less religious.
Yeah.
And he thinks these cases are going to make America become even less religious and have the opposite effect the court wants. I'm not smart enough to know if that's true or not. I hope he's right. I don't know if he's right, but that's what he thinks.
It's interesting. I've been saying something I wanted to get you to weigh in on real quick. I'll let you go. But at the ground level where I'm at right now, arguing with people over critical race theory and parental rights in school, and then you see the anti-gay, an anti-gay active hatred in our middle school, and you've seen it around the country. I've talked with you, obviously, I think the last time you joined me, and I often wonder if much of the reason for these strategies that really are coming out of think tanks and organized institutions and being spread real fast by people like Christopher Rufo is because of the makeup of the Supreme Court now, in that they can turn things back. That's not just to be divisive and to gain ratings and win elections. They actually can get the changes they want based on this court makeup. It's all like kind of a organized campaign. It's not a conspiracy or anything. It's pretty out in the open.
There is a constraint on the court's power, but only one. There's only one. What they can get away with.
That's the only constraint. They can get away with. No, but I'm saying to the point of Sprigman and what you're saying, we're becoming less religious, and they're making these laws, and it's going to backfire. Probably so, especially because they are taking away earned rights. That's really. I
hope so. Yeah, you're right. I hope you're right, Pete. I don't know if you're right, but I hope you're right.
I mean, like marriage, gay marriage, or any.
Right. Well, they're not going to.
Gender equity stuff.
I mean, it's funny. I was talking
abortion.
They're definitely going to take away abortion as a right.
But they are actively taking away, trying to roll back rights, adoption, everything. They're rolling back what we're teaching in school. They're putting it through their Jesus filter or whatever they want. But
I think it goes back to Andrew Young again. Sorry, I keep bringing him up, but it's just true. I think probably Amy Barrett and Justice Alito, to some degree Roberts, and definitely Thomas. I don't know enough about Kavanaugh to say, or Gorsuch, but probably them too. They're afraid of America looking like you and I want America to look, as opposed to how they want America to look. And they want America to look Christian or Jewish. They don't care. One of the two. They just do. And they prefer to be white, frankly, including Justice Thomas. So they want to see an America that reflects their values. And that's fine. We all have the right to lobby for that. But they shouldn't be doing it from the Supreme Court the next day.
Well, we'll see what happens politically. It's really hard to.
I would love there to be a strong. There will be a big backlash.
There's going to be, but with the way the districts are so gerrymandered,
but there'll be a political backlash. But it may not be. It may take 20 years. It will happen.
Yeah,
it will happen.
I think probably less time than that. It's already seemingly, people are starting to wake up again. It
only matters in election, maybe, but either elections will change or there'll be tremendous.
I think this thing with Florida and Disney is fascinating.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I think it's crazy that the Republicans are doing. It's so anti-conservative in every way.
So I had a Florida law professor on my podcast that's going to come out today or tomorrow. I had her last week. This isn't relevant to this issue. She's a Muslim, and but Pete, you have to watch. I insist that you watch this one podcast of mine because it's all about climate change and what we're trying to do about it. And it's
for sure.
Totally
I would definitely will. Why'd you say watch? Can I listen?
You can listen or watch. Yes, sorry.
Okay. I don't want to look at you.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't look at me either. And I asked her about, and she is in a law school in Florida. So I asked her about Disney. Her reaction was interesting. Now, again, she's progressive. So
you were talking to her about climate issues, but you asked her about this?
At the very end, I said, because it was in the news. We taped it on Thursday, I think.
Oh, good. Is it out yet?
No, it'll come out tonight.
Okay, go ahead.
Fascinating interview with her about, there's a kid's lawsuit in Montana, literally brought by kids, about climate change, suing the state of Montana for all kinds of things I can't explain to you. I'm not smart enough. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like a fascinating lawsuit. And she thinks very shortly there's going to be such disasters environmentally that these kind of lawsuits will in fact work. It'll take a few years. Yeah, she was great.
Interesting perspective. By the way, that episode is now, for anybody listening, by the time they hear it, it is out. Supreme Myths. If you're not already subscribed to Eric's podcast, go ahead. So
thanks. And it was fun for me because I don't do very many non-con law ones, so I usually know. But this was like I knew nothing about the subject, or very little. So she was smart. But about Disney, she said she's really optimistic that this is going to backfire on him. That you just can't fight Disney. What sane person fights Disney? And she thinks it's going to really hurt him. I don't know if she's right or wrong. I don't know Florida politics. God, I hope
my understanding of the case is that Disney may not be losing much. They might be gaining, not having to pay $160 million in taxes. But
she said taxpayer bills are going to go up.
Yeah, but that's what I don't understand. They must all be Democrats or likely Democrats. He doesn't care. This is what it's become. Imagine a governor, a mayor, anybody in government raising your taxes overnight, like 20%. Your property taxes.
Because you're fighting with Disney of all things too. You're picking on Mickey Mouse. She said her parting words on this, and I agree with this. She also is a member of she's a active political member of the Democratic Party. Like she does stuff, I don't do. Like she works with the Democratic Party in Florida, and she basically says, if we can't make hay of this, we suck.
Yeah, Chris Murphy, she's so right.
I love Chris Murphy.
He tweeted, he's one of my favorite senators. He wrote,
me too.
Republicans fight Disney to force them to discriminate against gay kids. Democrats fight drug companies to force them to lower insulin prices for sick kids. Let's run on that message.
Yes, we won't, of course. We'll screw it up, but yes.
Yes, all right. I know you got to go. You got to heart out.
I do.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And people should... I never do this on your show. I don't really promote my Dorf on Law posts very often, but this one about religion I think is really important, and it tells you where the court is heading, and you should be mad about it. Not you, Dominic. You listeners should be really mad about where the court is heading with religion. It's
concerned,
terrifying.
and you can always promote and plug. I always do it after, but also I just thought you were going to promote your TikTok, which is always funny to hear you say, watch my TikTok. On Twitter, you're live tweeting today's hearings. I see this now, and you're like, see you on TikTok. You're so.
No, that's different. No, that was different. See you on TikTok was a reference to Elon Musk buying Twitter.
Oh, did he buy it?
Yeah, it's done, I think. Yeah.
Oh my God, I haven't even seen that yet.
Yeah, from my understanding, this is corporate law and it's kind of complicated. not going to speak to it. But my understanding is he's made an all-cash deal or something. It's basically maybe I'm wrong by the time this comes out. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. But Twitter today, corporate Twitter is suggesting that's pretty much done.
Wow.
I have no idea. I know.
I wonder what this means, if it is.
I told you exactly what it meant. See you on TikTok. That's what I meant by that.
Well, TikTok ain't Twitter.
I think you're missing the point. I don't think Twitter's going to change that much myself. But who knows? Maybe Twitter will. I think the world might be a better place without it.
Well, we're not getting rid of it, though. I mean,
he may change it so much that people leave. But that would be really stupid on his part, right? You
can argue a lot of. I think we'd be better without the internet and smartphones in general. But the realistic conversation is it's here to stay. I think. All right, man. I'll let you go. Thank you very much. Always awesome. Bye.
Bye.
And there he goes, Eric Siegel at Eastman Siegel on Twitter. Listen to his podcast, Supreme Myths. Read his books. Read that article at Dorf on Law. And that is all I've got for you on today's Stand Up. So thank you very much for listening and supporting with the subscription. I can't do it without your subscriptions. Go sign up for a subscription for as little as $5 a month. Come on, let's do it. You can hang out with us on Thursday night. I look forward to seeing you and hearing from you then. It's been way too long. I feel disconnected from folks, and I can't wait to see you and hear from you as always. So, speaking of great listeners and subscribers, Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter John Carroll taking us out. Thank you guys very much. Be the change you want to see in the world. Stand up to bullies. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. We got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Where the money all went, it'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says